Hey, welcome back to the Breakthrough Creative, the place where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. I'm your host, John McDevitt, and my guest this week is Wayne Kumingo once again. We had quite a lengthy conversation full of all kinds of good stuff and gems about his career as a video editor working on the show Check Please, amongst a bunch of other projects. And we are going to get into part two right now.
I don't want to get a cold call from some company I've never worked with. I don't know if you do LinkedIn too much. I do LinkedIn every once in a while, and I just get random people saying, "Hey, we need video work," and I don't know if you're a scam. I don't know if you're, I don't know who you are. One person is like overseas. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not even going to do it
Yeah.
unless you came from a respected source, as somebody I've worked with before. I'm not even going to entertain your your project because it just probably isn't going to be worth my effort at this point. And maybe I missed out on a few things, but I don't know. I highly
Yeah.
doubt it. If you're trying to cut a feature film with known guest stars, I don't think you're casting to strangers on LinkedIn.
Right. Right.
So and I'm sure that works for some industries, but it just doesn't really work for this one because it so needs to be way more personable.
It's intimate.
Yeah. Especially you're working with people. I got really lucky on the film on Rainbow's End. The screenwriter, I ended up sitting with her for a good 4 days. She came here, sat right next to me, and she's great. Like, she's fantastic. She's a fantastic human being, and we had so much fun, and it was great. You know what I mean? And this was before COVID too, by the way. This was because it takes a long time to put a film together and then release it. So, I don't know. It's been a really long time since I've done that, and it's been a really long time since I've done that with a complete stranger. So to have it all happen, but then it doesn't surprise me that the person I know and I agreed to work on their film. It doesn't surprise me that he knows good people who are, who are fun to work with, and good to work
Mm-hmm.
with. So
Well, it'd be strange
it's
if they didn't, right?
right. I mean, yeah, why is this person working with such a jerk? That would make no sense to me across the board.
Right.
That would be like, no, I don't want any part of that. But it's sort of like once you surround yourself with good people, then you instantly trust those people that they're in touch with. So it is like a self-fulfilling kind of prophecy where everything again still manages to stay aligned for me for whatever reason. But
Well, and I know, like you and I mean, I don't know how you feel, and you don't have to say it, or I'll just edit it out if it's bad. But um, you know, I haven't seen you in quite a while, and I saw you this year, and I'm seeing you now. It's like you haven't changed. Yeah, you've changed, right? But
yeah.
you haven't changed. Like you are one of the most likable people I've ever met. You're a good guy, and you've been a great friend all these years. And it feels like we can pick up wherever we've left off. And it doesn't ever feel like we've left off to me.
No, and that's what we ditto back at you. Back at you, John. And then
Oh, I'm
it's like,
so
now that
glad you
we're
said
doing
that. I
this,
was so
no, why,
nervous.
now that we're doing this, it's like, why has it been that long?
Yeah,
Since, but
yeah.
I know why. It's because you got family, and you got kids, and you got other shit you got to deal with. And
And you're
I,
editing, and I'm painting, and yeah,
yeah, and it's just, it doesn't happen.
right.
It just doesn't happen. But through no will of our own, that's the way it was, right? So yeah, I love picking up with people that I haven't talked to in so long, and you just pick up and you're back at it, and there's no explanation necessary. I
Yeah,
think being in touch on social media helps a lot too.
yeah.
Because I don't feel like, even though I haven't seen somebody for 2 years, I don't feel like I haven't seen them for 2 years. I'm still aware of that they're alive and they're well and they're doing stuff. And I know you have kids. I don't think I met your son once, right? A
Yeah,
long
I
time
think the
ago.
last time we got together was before Abraham was born.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Was it really that long ago? I want to
I
say
think
he was
so.
he was already.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, maybe.
All
I
right.
don't remember, but I remember Skywalker Ranch more, John. What does that tell
What
me?
was my son doing there?
Yeah, right. I don't think he was there. No. But yeah, no, and that's, I think, again, what it's all about, and that's why the person who, kind of called me for the film 30 years later is, I didn't even hesitate to say, yeah, okay, let's talk, because it's like, you're good people. I'm going to talk to you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll talk to you in another 30 years if it takes another 30 years. But yes, I will
Yeah.
always talk to you about it. And I don't know. It's really, really, again, that's why I feel lucky to be in that sort of position. Is like, I don't know if that's true for everyone else, but it's certainly true for me. So hence lucky.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: when you left, the job 12 years ago or whatever it was, I think you said 12 years, and you had you had some kind of foundation to jump to. I've started to talk about freelance as a little bit like playing Frogger, and you jump
Oh,
to a
sure.
log, it's a project or a client that's moving, and then you got to jump to the next one and go the other way
Or
so you don't
sometimes you
get
got to jump
crushed.
back.
Sometimes you got to jump back. Exactly. How did it come together for you as far as, and I guess the term I would use is revenue streams? Like you've got to, if you're not making $80,000 from one client or whatever you need to live on, you
Yeah.
got to cobble it together. So how have you managed that?
Again, I think it's really, for me, it was less of a risk because I already had worked with so many different people, and they had all moved on, and they're all doing their different things. So I already had multiple points of contact with different types of people doing different kinds of work, right? Again, I think that's harder to build up that sort of base of people you work with who aren't the same as you. Um, I didn't start out being freelance. That was the scariest thing for me to do. But I think after having been exposed to big groups of people doing multiple kinds of work for 10 years, I felt confident to be able to do it. And again, I think I had like one thing lined up with somebody who had also went freelance and said, I have this project, will you work on it? And I said yes, and that was my very first thing. I don't think I could have worked freelance and then sat there, okay, I'm freelance now, I think I needed to be like, okay, I'm freelance on Monday and I have something to actually work on, and now I'm not as overly concerned about it. Also, at the time, I probably could have gone back to a staff position somewhere. So I think I had that as a cushion in my mind too. If I really, really wanted to, I could probably find a staff editor position somewhere. Um, you know, yeah, and I guess that's it. It's just knowing enough. I felt confident that I knew enough people that one of them might call me and occupy my time until the next thing came along. I mean, that's really all it is. So,
And then you had teaching as well, right?
oh yeah, I kind of always forget about that. But even though that's only like 15 weeks at a time and it's only twice a year, so it's not taking up my entire year. Yeah, there's just that little bit of extra something coming in,
Yeah.
that doesn't have me so worried about it all the time, so and that's like the bonus. That's like I get to talk about that. I basically do this for 3 hours with my students. And then somebody pays me, so it's kind of okay. I
Do you have times where you get worried about making the ends meet?
This year has been not pleasant, I guess, but it's not about it's I'm not at that level of worry again, thankfully. And I think always having one thing cooking is helpful.
Hmm.
Um, I'll actually say too, I'm really looking forward to not having something to do for like 2 weeks as well. There's this point where you just need to recharge your batteries
Yeah.
too. And I don't think I'm quite there. There's always something that's hanging on that I don't have quite approval on, or I have the footage for the music video that I'm working on, but I don't have the finished mixed audio recording yet. Like they haven't finalized that. So it's coming. It's an anticipation of working on something, but it's not free and clear in my mind. Like I have literally nothing to do. I kind of want that. I kind of want that for just like a week.
So
you
when you're
know
working on a project, how does a day unfold for you? Like, are you well, I'll just leave it at that. How's it
How
go?
does it downfall? It depends on the project. I mean, Check Please is very deadline oriented, so I'd have to structure around my classes, which are normally on Thursday. And the worst thing for me was they would want something Friday morning, and I can't do it on Thursday. So that means I got to do it on Wednesday. It's like all just a bunch of like back timing. And I was able to get Check Please segments done in a predictable amount of time. So I was able to sort of structure that accordingly. I think when you're juggling multiple projects is the thing that do you have to do that a lot? Are you juggling
Yeah.
multiple things? Okay. That's something that's not taught to you. You kind of have to figure it out, right? I've learned that I'm really much better at compartmentalizing, or, what's that term? Like columnar, like thinking in columns, right? And usually when I'm given a project, the very first thing I worry about is technical.
Hmm.
They send you get sent a hard drive. You got to copy the hard drive off. I got to pull it up. I got to just make sure it's all working, and I got to answer, hey, what did you shoot this on? Do I need to know anything special? And there's no creative effort necessary on my part at all. It's just technically okay, it's working. Everything is as expected. And then I think and then I'll sleep on it. Like I will just be like, okay, that's it, done. You know, and then the next day is, or you go to lunch and you come back. The next gear shift is organize. Okay, so technically everything's working. I don't need to think about that anymore, but now I just need to figure out what they gave me. What do I have to work with? I have to watch it. I have to just label stuff. You have to, label clips and figure out what you have. And again, sleep on it. Then I'm like, okay, done. And then
By the
once
way, when
all,
you're sleeping on it, is
yeah,
that is do you find that your subconscious is answering stuff for you the next day then?
totally. I mean, even just bringing in the technical side, because you got to do a quick look at the footage. When you bring it
Right.
in from just a technical standpoint, you're already starting to think about it in the back of your mind. There's subconsciously it's there. I didn't know what it looked like yesterday, and today I know what it looks like. And then when you organize it, I think it's kind of the beginning of editing, because what is editing? Editing is what stays, what goes, and what order do you put it in, how
Right.
much do you take out, how much do you leave in? So just going through the organizational process is, I'm already starting to edit it as I'm labeling clips or labeling footage that was given to me. Just instinctually, in the back of my mind, I'm already eliminating things and falling in love with other things. I'm like, ooh, that's a great shot. Gonna use that somewhere, whatever it is. But that's not the point of that process to do that. So I try to just not do it, right?
Yeah.
And then that third time I come in is all creative then, because I've done the boring copying and the labeling and the organizing, but I've also had an overnight to think about it and to start with it fresh. you know so that's what I was sort of saying about the juggling projects with Check Please or classes or whatever. Is I would, I don't do anything in a day anymore. I don't do anything in a day and a half anymore. I take that day and a half that I'm charging someone or what they're paying me for, and I spread it out into technical, organize, and edit, right? And the other thing you have to try to remember to do too, which is difficult for many people, is, I try to work within a budget and try to personally not exceed a certain amount of time, right? If somebody's paying you $100, well, I'm not working a week for you. You're going to get $100 worth of work. But that's more on me, not on them, so to speak. I'm going to work um, at a comfortable volume based on what the project is paying if that makes any sense. It's almost like reverse engineering from the budget. Okay,
Right.
what does that get you? Well, that gets you this amount of time, so I'm going to have to break it down this way if we're going to achieve it, right? And you always have to leave. I don't know how this is true for you with like murals and like things on a wall that are like on a wall. It's like, can't take it away. It's on the wall now. Um, we always have to leave room for changes, for comments and for revisions and all of that stuff. And I think there's a propensity to just sort of say early on, one and done, like, I worked all night on this and we've spent all the money in the budget and it's the very first thing out of my brain and I'm so creative and here it is and it's done. And then people are like, well, actually we need changes on that. This isn't working, that's not working. And you've just spent your budget on it. So I think trying to back time that into the process is also, and that's always unpredictable, I think. Trying to back time that into the process is something that's where the kind of experience comes in too, right? But on that note, I also do say that I don't ever want the first thing I show somebody to be something that I'm not happy with. And maybe that's back to the relationship thing, is if you're working with like-minded people, people like the first thing you show them. They
Right.
really do like it
Right.
because you're all on the same page. It isn't to say there's no changes, but the changes at that point are constructively helping the story you're telling. They're not nitpicky about font choices or things of that
Right.
nature that have no bearing on the story you're telling. um, so again, that's kind of like throwing all that stuff in a blender too. That's
Yeah. What you're telling me, you're sharing with me about your experience is very similar to my experience, in that there's a client aspect to the project, there is the technical aspect to the project, and then there's the creative aspect to the project, and they all work, and then there's a financial aspect to the project,
absolutely, yeah, that's it.
and the financial is kind of floating around it, and I need to remember what I'm doing and where I'm at. And I don't know that it's that much different as far as our process, other than if I'm painting an analog painting, I'm using real paint and not pixels. There's no undo button, and I need to have rough sketches for them initially. That's just how I roll, is like, we're going to do rough. If they don't say, we just trust you and just go for it, and then they sign an agreement
Right,
and
right.
I get half the money, right? It's like, all right, so here's the sketches. What do you think? Give me some feedback. Here's another round. What do you think? Then I start going to color, and then we're pretty much locked in then. And then as I'm actually painting it, in the middle of the painting, they may say, oh, could you make this building blue? Sure, no problem. I'll make that blue. And can anyway, little minor changes. Now I've heard other artists who go, no changes. We agreed.
Right,
Well, I don't know that that's good business.
right.
I don't have to live with it. It's not in my house.
Right,
In
right.
my client's house,
And
I
if
want
it's
them to
not
be
and
happy.
if it's not impossible to change the
Right,
color of the house, then you yeah, sure, why not? It'll
right.
take me, we're this far along. If it takes me half an hour to change the
Yeah.
house, I'll change
And,
that.
and I've had somebody say they've wanted to make a major change to something after we've agreed the whole way
Yeah.
on where we're going, or they've signed off. And then I'll say, okay, I can do that. That's going to add cost. And then you'll find out how much they really want it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, no, it's great as it is. Okay.
Right. Well, and that's the thing that you're not really taught as a freelancer, is like asking for money.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, and saying, "Oh, there's a change, and our original agreement is null and void because you're asking for excessive revisions or to
Yeah.
change the whole direction halfway through." Did
How
you?
did you figure that out?
I'm still working on it, John. I'm still working on that. There's day rates in this industry that you kind of stick to, or you start off with that as like you throw it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's my day rate, and I don't even know if those are agreed upon by the industry anymore, to be quite honest with you. But like in network television, there's at least an expectation that those people know what things cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I think you have to take that into consideration too, where there's a difference between doing a project for Coca-Cola and doing a project for the, a local nonprofit who's trying to feed homeless people or whatever it is, right? They don't have the same budget going in. They don't have the same operating budget going in. So I think it's just being sensitive to that without, you being comfortable with it. Like, if I were to work on something like that, it would be because I would get an emotional reward out of a lower paying project,
Mm-hmm.
or I'd be willing to reduce my rate for uh, a nonprofit organization that I believe in the work that they're doing or something. I have no problem with that at all. The thing you want to avoid doing is working for free because it'll eventually lead to paid things. Have you heard that before, John?
I still, from time to time, will hear that.
Yeah, it's like, oh,
I
the
really
exposure
will.
you get on this is going to be so great.
And
Eh,
my response to that is, oh, wow, thanks for thinking of me. I'm really good with my exposure right now.
yeah,
And then they're a little taken aback.
yeah. I mean, I keep track. I have a Excel spreadsheet that I just try to every day type a start time in and an end time, and I by project, right? It's just the easiest way I've been able to do it. I know there's apps out there that do it,
Yeah.
but then I'm like, oh, I forgot to hit the button, and then you can't go back and edit it, and
Yeah.
so I gotta remember to stop it 2 hours late because I started it 2 hours late, even though I've stopped working. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like too much. So I just have a spreadsheet, and it's been the easiest way for me to keep track of, and I try to remember to open it up every day or two after I've worked on stuff and go, okay, from 11 to 3 I was working on this, and then I think I ate something, and then I went back from 5 to 7 and I worked on this other project, because it's a lot of that too. It's, bits and starts. Or if I'm working on one project, I'll send somebody something to a client, something to look at 3, and then they don't get back to me till 4 with 2 little changes I need to make, and then I'll do those from 4 to 5, right? So I just like to keep track of that stuff, and I think that's really helpful, just as a numeric gauge of how long it actually takes to do something. Because the littlest thing, I'll be like, oh, what did I spend on that? Oh, I think I was like half a day, maybe a day. And I go to the spreadsheet if I was diligent, and I'm like, whoa, 17 hours, because it's just little things that you'd end up getting nibbled to death by,
Yeah.
a change here, an email there, a half an hour phone conversation here, and it's not to say I'm going to go back to a client and demand 17 hours of payment if that wasn't what we agreed on, but now I know.
Yeah.
That's why I said earlier on that nothing takes 4 hours anymore, unless you're in news. It just doesn't happen that way anymore. I think the ease of which you can make changes because of software and all that stuff, the ease of which you can do this stuff, it's just part of the expectation now. You can keep playing forever. There was an interview I saw with the Stranger Things editing staff. It was like
I was going to say the Duffer Brothers, but it was the editing group.
the editors, yeah. And I don't remember if it was one editor with a lot of assistants or multiple editors, but anyway, it was something very interesting with Stranger Things and the new model of like releasing um, shows to binge watch all at
Yeah.
once.
Yeah.
The whole season comes out, and he said something at the time that I thought was really interesting that I never heard anyone say it before, which is kind of the pros and the cons all at once. They got to like episode 8 or 6, and they realized that a choice they made about the plot in episode 1 was wrong now, because the way the writing unfolded.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like the X-Files. They committed to that
Right.
one storyline, and now the whole rest of the season is trying to explain that decision they made in episode 1, of that season. Stranger Things, they when they got to it and it was causing problems in episode 6 or 8 or whatever it was, they just went back and they changed episode 1 again, because they could still do it. You're not committed to anything. So think about that. I don't know what that first season was, 10 episodes maybe. So it's like 10 hours. You're working on a 10-hour film. And at any moment, anything can change. Nothing is ever locked down until it's on Netflix. And
So
then,
I suspect that like most television shows, and maybe I'm wrong, they shot a week per episode, right?
yeah,
Not including post and all that. But so they shot a week. So they had 10 weeks of shooting, and then they're editing as they're going, and then
yeah.
they're kind of keeping track of it. I mean, that's just fascinating that they could then go back to the first episode and say, all right, we got to
And
change
actually
this.
fix yeah, it was a plot commitment that they made for character arc or
Yeah.
for the arc of the whole season or whatever, and they realized that that was the wrong choice.
It's like editing
So
a novel.
yeah, right, exactly, because it's, yeah, that's a really good, yeah, you're not publishing chapter by chapter, you're
Right.
publishing the whole thing at once, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and I hadn't really thought of that, but that's what I guess what I'm always doing on a smaller basis, and that's what you would always do within an episode. But
Yeah.
in your mind, those are manageable because it's a half an hour, or it's a short video for a client, or it's an hour max, not, or it's a 2 hour movie, but not a 10 hour movie, essentially, you know? Um, and again, that's sort of what I was getting at about the expectation for, you know, now clients expect that, oh, I can change everything at any given time.
Yeah.
Well, yes, technically, but no, because you don't have the the scope of the project is not there. It's going to take too much time and too much money, you know, and all that.
Yeah. 3D
Um,
rendering did that to me because I'm a 2D. I
yeah,
render things to look three-dimensional,
sure.
but then I would have clients ask me, "Hey, can we just turn this a little bit?" And I'd say, "No." Well, why not? I'm like, "No, no, no. Here's the difference. This is this and this is
Yeah, yeah,
this."
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, can we turn it a little bit?
Yeah, then you're just dealing with people who, well, then you say, yes, here's the cost, you know, it'll take me
Yeah, right.
half a day if you want
Yeah.
to do that,
Do you
then let's
really
do
want it? Do you really
Yeah,
want to turn it? I mean, that's kind of how I'll boil it down with clients. If the, because the deadline's always doing this,
sure.
right? And you're up against it and you don't have answers, all the answers till maybe here, and you've got to get it done. But I
Right.
may have a client who'll say, can we make it green? Or they want to change some aesthetic of it. And I'll ask them because there are other things that need to be done, and it may be a simple change, but I want them to know that we're getting close. Like we're getting real close here, and this has to be delivered. I'll ask them, if I make it green, will it sell anymore? And I'm usually met by some silence because they're considering that. And then usually the answer is no.
Right.
And I'll say, so do you want me to change it, or no, no, you can leave it as it is. Okay.
Right, right, right.
And
No,
it's
that's a
very
good point.
pleasant. It's very
But
nice. I'm not being mean or
yeah, yeah, no, right. And that's like, you know, those are the things you're not taught, and you have to
right.
figure that out on the fly sometimes right in the middle. And I still don't like asking for money. And my least favorite question is, well, what would you charge us for something like this? I'll take everything you got in your bank account. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take as much as you got, and you're going to get a, a better product if I'm happy while I'm cutting this thing.
So
You're going to
how do
get a
you
worse
figure it out then?
product
How do you
if I'm,
figure out your rate?
everybody's different. You know, again, and I think it's just being aware of who might have money to work with and who doesn't. You know, again,
Yeah.
nonprofits are generally scraping by.
Right.
So, but you know, then you leave that. But then I guess that's back to what you're saying: is you leave the money, the issue of money, leave it in their court. Well, is it important for you to pay me this for it? And let them decide. Don't try to actually go through that thought process with them. Just say, here
Right.
it is, and then I'm going to go away, and then
Right.
let me know tomorrow what you think. And actually, quite frankly, I've taken to just asking people, what do you have? How much do you want to
Yeah.
spend? Because I don't even know where people are coming from anymore. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't get into this business to work for $20 an hour. Didn't do it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Sometimes I do, but I'm doing, it's my choice. I'm not being dictated, right?
Right.
I'll accept it for what it is, and maybe in my mind it will lead to something else. I couldn't even do the movie, the feature film was low budget, so I didn't get nearly anything that I would consider a rate for it. You know what I mean? But I got something, and that's awesome because I would not expect that as a graduated film student to get paid anything for a feature. That's everyone's scrounging at that point, right? So the fact that I got anything was great. But back to my spreadsheet on that, I could pull it up right now. It was like 700 hours of work. And again, I'm not saying 8 hour day, 8 hour day,
Right.
and I took 2 hours to lunch in there. If I took an hour for lunch, I didn't include it in that number, because that's
Right.
what I do every day with my spreadsheet to keep track. And I could probably, if I have my calculator handy here, do you want to do the math on that? I don't even know.
Well,
700
it's about
divided by,
16 weeks.
yeah, okay, so 700 divided, and I think it's over now, so it's actually going to be more like 750 probably. Um, yeah, divided by,
17, 18 weeks, somewhere in
yeah,
there.
yeah. And I don't know, and that's not working continuously. That was
Right.
working these other things and having classes on Thursday and all that. That's why I sort of say you need a break after something like that, because
Yeah.
you just need to, whoa, take a step back. But yeah, I don't know if anyone really thinks about it in those terms, and now I can actually tell someone, well, the last one I cut on nights and weekends, working around other projects that I was doing. And that's a lot of it, what it was, occasionally I'd be able to have a whole day to cut the film together, but it was a lot of nights and weekends away from the other stuff. Um, you know, the what did you say it was? How
Like
many weeks?
17 and a half
17
weeks.
weeks.
17 and a half 40-hour
That's
weeks.
4 months, but that's 4 months if you're doing it 8 to 10 hours a day every day
Right.
during normal business hours. So now you got to take that and you got to spread it out, and it takes 9, 10, 11 months to a year
Yeah.
to put a film together. And I don't know what that actual start and stop time was, but it was probably, I'm guessing, around 7 months start to finish on that, maybe
Yeah.
even 8. So yeah, now I know.
Yeah.
Right, but I would never expect, well, my day rate is, and it took me 700, so I'm going to do the math, and now you owe me $800,000 to cut this film or whatever it is. That doesn't make any sense if people aren't coming from that
Right.
willingness
If you
to
do
pay.
submit that invoice, I want to hear the response.
No, you know what I do? I don't even think I shared that with them yet, but I'd be like, hey, just so you know, and
Yeah.
again, no, this is no bearing on anything other than it takes 4 months to cut a movie.
Yeah.
Let's everyone keep that in mind for the next one.
Yeah.
So, and I lied actually too. The very first film I cut was back at the cable company when we were all, speaking of film school and everyone scrounging for no pay things. It was like a really low budget, speaking of the X-Files too, really low budget sort of sci-fi comedy horror thing. And the two famous people were in that eventually too. I stopped working on it after we had our first cut, and then the director took it over. But I think he ended up getting like Corey Feldman to do a scene, if I'm not mistaken. And then in my class 2 years ago, somebody's like, hey, I was watching, one of my students is like, hey, we were trying to figure out what to watch, and we were flipping through Netflix or trying to streaming services or whatever, and your name came up. So it got released, and who picked it up? Trauma. And I was immediately kind of embarrassed that that film made it out. And one of my students watched it, who may have been high, which is possibly the best way to watch that movie. um, but no, and then like 2 days later, I'm like, I did a trauma film. And like it hit me, like that is nothing to be ashamed about. Do you know what I mean? Like
I do.
that is it's kind of like satisfaction and gratification on a level that I didn't think I would be as happy about it as I was. I don't want to leave. I want to keep editing, and I want it to be able to support me, and I don't want to get to the point where I have to not do it anymore, or
Yeah.
just do it on a side project for somebody's favor to say, oh, he used to wait that he used to edit, people used to like him. Oh, I'll come back for my one last edit. I don't actually want to do that. I think I'm my own worst critic when it comes to my own editing choices that I make. With a critical eye,
Yeah.
I like watching stuff that I cut 3 months ago or 6 months or a year ago, and going like, ooh, what was I thinking? But it's not to say it's bad, or not to say that anyone else would notice. It's because I would make a different choice today. Yeah, I would make a different choice today than
Yeah.
I made at that time, and that
Yeah.
to me says that I'm growing. We had spoken about this a little bit earlier too. Like, there's no growth in the Star Wars movie, right? Like, I've changed, and I think me being able to do that with previous things I've worked on, like, I'd probably look at the first episode of Check Please that had great ratings, and hey, we got picked up, and here we are 19 years later. I'd probably look at it today and go, well, is everyone you know? But then again, it's a factor. It isn't necessarily all a factor of, is this fantastic?
Yeah.
It's more like, wait, you're cranking these out one a week, and or whatever, you're doing it on that kind of little budget. Like, that's where that's how, when people get impressed by it, when they find out how quickly you did it, or how little you had to work with when you did it.
It served the need. It
Yeah,
served the need of
it
the
serves a need.
project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So,
right, and it isn't always up on screen, if that makes
right.
any sense. Again, it's not
Right.
a badly shot or produced show. It's just I've changed,
Right.
and I think the day I stop changing, that's when I should get out.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I will
Yeah.
just naturally have gotten out by that time. I actually like talking about editing. I like teaching. I mean, it's a 3-hour lecture class where all I do is really talk. I mean, it's conversational with my students and stuff, but I do most of the talking. And I actually love it. I
Yeah.
love it. It's like, it gets me excited after I talk about the same material that we've talked about, because I do it, semester. I talk about it one day, one semester, and then I have 4 months away from it, and I come back to it. And every time I talk about certain things, I just get excited. It still invigorates me. It gives me that creative energy that I look for sometimes. And maybe that's, again, back to sort of the sleeping on it kind of mentality, is if all you're doing is cranking stuff out and you don't have time to step back and assess what you've done, well, you're going to get burnt out and possibly never recover from it, and then you'll stop growing too. You'll stop the growth. And I don't think that's where I want to be right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. Growth needs rest.
Yeah.
Growth needs a break. It needs a place to breathe.
It's just everything, peak producer I worked with, executive producer at Check Please, who would always say peaks and valleys. So you need something to come up, and then you need to let people stop, and then you need to come up, and then you need to, if a half an hour thing is all like this, then it's too much. You need to be able to digest things in smaller pieces, and to have things sort of go up and then come down, and then go up and then come down. Yeah. So I hope I'm still doing that for the foreseeable future anyway.
I bet you will be. So I'm going to start wrapping up now.
Okay.
Is there anything else you feel like we need to cover that we haven't covered?
No, I actually did make a little note here. No, and I think I don't think I.
Don't tell me this took 700 hours.
No, it just felt like it. No. Joking. We know each other. We can joke about. Okay.
So Wayne, as we wrap up, I just want to ask you: do you have any parting words of wisdom for any creatives who want to make a living from their art?
No. Yes. No. Of course I did. I think a lot of it is already what I said. Little bits and pieces of what I said. Getting your foot in the door, knowing a lot of people. And I think it goes beyond just editing or production. Again, art communities have their own worlds that they live in too, right? and maybe you can back me up on this. I'd say the biggest piece of advice, even if you work with somebody who you're not going to work with again, is never burn a bridge, right? And I think that's all part of that.
Yes.
If you know somebody, I'm working with people I've known for years and years and years, or more importantly, who've known other people I've worked with for years and years, or who know a person who knows a person who knows and if you burn one of those bridges along the way, then they're never going to get in touch with you. So yeah, never burn a bridge. It's like an old terrible cliche, but it's so true, because again, in this climate, in this untraditional setting of working alone in a studio, those connections are just the most important lifeline that anyone can have, I think, as they're starting out.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I would say you've never done that. I've never ever witnessed that or heard tell of that. That's straight from the horse's mouth. You stand up to that.
For what? What have I?
For that advice. So,
that advice. Oh, me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Did I? I don't know, actually.
I better not hear anything while I'm editing
yeah.
this.
No, I don't think I have. No.
No, you're a good guy. And that, I'll often tell people that feelings are good, but you don't have to act on them in the moment.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is usually where burned bridges come from.
Yeah. No, and I think people appreciate the pushing of the bridge if you're really adamant about something and that you believe in. I mean, being strong-willed is also a good thing too. But just knowing where those lines are and what, never burn it completely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. So Wayne, where can people find you?
Here most of the time these days, it seems. No, I've got a website, again, word of mouth. If you know somebody I know, they know how to get a hold of me. No, I've got a website. It's kumingo.com, that has little information about me and just some clips of past projects that are always in need of updating. So maybe I'll try to do that soon. And I'm on Instagram. Is probably the best social media platform for me. Although it's more about personal stuff. It isn't always about editing exactly. My Instagram handle is WayneJKL. And that's I got a little tip for you. My Instagram name is WayneJKL because when you're editing, your hand is right here on JKL to play through and navigate your footage. So my initials also happen to be Wayne JK. So it's kind of a quirky little thing. I hate thinking of handles, but there you go. Wayne JKL on Instagram.
That's awesome.
And and that's probably the best way, I think.
Okay.
You get a hold of me. One thing about the social media thing I actually do think of is like the branding. I think it's important. You can. A lot of people have like a specific. Do you have like an arts?
I started it with @mural guy.
Okay.
Because I was doing all these murals.
Sure.
And then I haven't done as many murals, and some
Right.
put all this other stuff up. So I changed it to John_McDavitt_art.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Anyway, that's
but it's John McDavitt art as opposed to mural guy, right? But you're
Right.
still, it's still focused on your work, right?
Right.
My Instagram is not focused on my work. I mean, I could probably start another one that was like Wayne Edits or something like that.
Right.
That would be projects I'm working on and screenshots and all that stuff. But I don't necessarily find that terribly exciting for people. Maybe others would, I don't know. But I actually think it's also important to have a social life, interests outside of those are the things that creatively energize me,
Right.
and give me, that sort of the charging of the batteries to go do work. So, my Instagram is a lot of non-editing related stuff, but again, I think it's all those outside interests that make you more unique as in your career choice, and if you like tigers, John, you probably actually like tigers, right? If you're painting tigers, right?
Or dragons.
Or dragons, you really like dragons. I mean, there you go. So, but that's more evident for you. It's not necessarily evident for me in my work,
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's that kind of a Instagram. It's more personal than it is work related. But by all means, if anyone wants to follow me there, I'm happy to have you. So
Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for being a great friend all these years. Thanks for being
yeah,
a guest. You rock.
indeed. Thank you, John. Thanks for having.
Oh, Wayne, thanks so much for being my guest. Thanks for being my friend all these years. And thank you for sharing all the insight that you shared during these last couple of episodes. And there's just so many great nuggets of advice and experience and things that we can each apply to our creative businesses if we really look at it. And I think that I love listening to how you approach your day rate, how you approach a project with some flexibility in how you charge, while also, standing your ground so that you can make a living, right? Because it's so easy, I think, being a creative to kind of lose sight of that because you're so interested in the project and the artistry of it that boundaries can really get stepped across pretty easily by both sides, by the client and the artist. And we got to watch out for that. And your advice about not burning any bridges, ooh, that's good advice. So thanks again, and thank you, my audience, for watching. And I hope that you are going to get busy about the business of creating something with your creative skills and abilities and desires and talents, and you go make a living with it. Okay, so until next week, I am John McDavitt, host of The Breakthrough Creative, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.